Hello, hello. We are back with another episode of the P2P Soap Box. I'm your host and P2P BFF, Marcy Maxwell. Today, we have got a fun topic to dig into, and one I know is something many of us are eager to learn more about: how we can all tap into the power of live streaming and influencer marketing to grow our peer-to-peer fundraising. It is a wild understatement to say that live streaming and influencers have changed the way we both consume entertainment and make our next big purchases. And with new technologies and the rise of content creators, many nonprofits are still trying to figure out how to merge this new world with the world of fundraising. Now, I will say, as I have learned more about this space, I have had a bit of an aha moment that maybe these campaigns aren't so different after all. While content creators certainly open up a new and exciting audience for peer-to-peer fundraising, many streaming campaigns have the same core elements of our existing events: empowered fundraisers, inspiration, recognition, calls to give, calls to fundraise. As today's guest will share, their live streaming event was born out of the need to adapt the old school telethon or radiothon for this new audience. Plus, these fundraisers require the same level of engagement, resources, and support from our teams, even if it does come through different channels. We have the perfect guest to help us dive into these nuances and these similarities. I'm excited to be joined today by Andy Steig, Stand Up to Cancer's Influencers and Gaming Community Director. The mission of Stand Up to Cancer is to engage the public in supporting a new collaborative model of cancer research, to increase awareness about cancer prevention, and to highlight progress being made in the fight against the disease. Established in 2008 by media and entertainment leaders, it is no surprise that Stand Up to Cancer has turned to the world of live streaming, gaming, and influencer marketing to help expand its reach. During our conversation, Andy will share how the organization launched its influencer and streaming initiative in 2019 and how it has evolved over the past 5 years. Together, we'll dig into strategies for recruiting and retaining content creators to support your mission, as well as how to build strong collaborations between influencers, brands, and your nonprofit. We'll also talk about fostering digital community, measuring success, and his tips for piloting your first streaming campaign. So let's jump right in to my conversation with Stand Up to Cancer's Andy Steig. Andy, welcome to the P2P Soap Box. We're so happy to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. Now, Andy, you come from a little bit of a different background than maybe some of our, long-term nonprofit employees that might be listening. So can you tell us a little bit about your personal journey, your professional journey that led you to your role at Stand Up to Cancer?
Yeah, of course. It's a very long story, but I'm going to keep it short. So I was in the entertainment industry for nearly 10 years. I started in features. I worked on indie features as far back as 2007. When I moved to Los Angeles, I'm in Northeaster originally. So I moved out to LA to do the whole thing and try to make it in Hollywood. I was actually lucky enough to work in the industry. But what's funny is I ended up in reality television in around 2009. Working on my first reality show called Kitchen Nightmares, which I'm sure many people are familiar with Gordon Ramsay. And I actually worked my way up to a segment producer and then eventually a supervising producer in reality TV. And I did a lot from, field producing, shooting shows on location to even post-production and editorial. So I worked with editors. I absolutely enjoyed it very much. And it was a lot of travel, a lot of work. So in my 20s, it was really easy to do all the work and the travel. But, my passion was always gaming. And what ended up happening is I pivoted around 2017 and started doing a little bit of media journalism and doing content pieces for gaming conferences, events. And I was really interested in the digital space as well. So beyond just, working in that area, I was interested in digital platforms and digital producing, which at a time in 2017, you never saw any of, like influencer marketing people's jobs on LinkedIn around then. And so I kind of started to look for jobs, and Stamp to Cancer, of all places, in 2019 was looking for someone to lead their influencer creator programs. And from working in journalism and gaming, I had already worked with a lot of influencers that were streaming already. And so I really loved the idea of the job, and lucky enough, they picked me. And 5 years later, I've been working in nonprofit ever since. So it's been really an interesting journey, to say the least.
I love it. Well, I'm going to jump right into our questions, but I feel like you could do a reality show on the lives of nonprofit fundraisers, and it would be amazing. And I would totally watch that. I'll just put that bug in your ear.
That's a great show idea, actually.
I love that. You mentioned that Stand Up to Cancer was just launching kind of its streamer and influencer fundraising initiatives in 2019 when you joined. Can you share a little bit about how this got started and what does it look like today?
Yeah, so actually what's interesting, about a year before I actually came on board, Stamp to Cancer does their bicentennial telecast, which is broadcast across major networks. And in 2018, they did a digital show for the first time. And on that digital show, Pokimane and Markiplier, who are two very large creators, actually hosted our digital show. And I think that's what kind of prompted Stamp to Cancer to really see, oh, wow, this is a really interesting area. A lot of these creators are starting to become larger and build these larger audiences. So that's where they started to say, let's bring in someone that could really put a lot of effort and focus in the area of streamers and content creators and influencers. So really, though, we kicked it off in 2019. And what's interesting is I started in the summer of 2019. So my first experience was going to TwitchCon in 2019 and really getting immersed in the opportunity to work with creators from a nonprofit perspective. And we kicked off our first event, which became a bigger piece of our community, called the SU2C Stream Team. So our first event was an end of year event from December to end of year. I'm sorry, from November to end of year. And we just did a call to action to streamers and content creators, especially primarily on Twitch back then. And it turned out to be pretty successful. We did a lot of outreach, and it was our first kind of, throwing spaghetti at the wall and saying, let's do something. And really, that's really catapulted us today, where it's been over, we're hitting our 5-year mark with the program. And we've done so many different things, from working with creators, obviously, to do events. Like currently we have our August event called Up to Us Stamp to Cancer, which is a month-long event with creators and streamers. But we've done in-game opportunities, like an in-game applications for nonprofits. We've done a skin game, in-game opportunity with Xbox in 2021. So my job is, one, to build this relationship, continue to grow our program with the creators, but how do we innovate in different platforms in this digital space? So, we're lucky to say that we've worked with over 3,000 creators, from organic to outreach, over the course of these years. And it's been really impactful. But that's pretty much the gist of how it all started and where it is today.
Such a different world. I'm sure there are people sitting here listening who are like, I'm used to talking about walkers and team captains and cyclists, and hearing us talk about influencers and gamers and streamers. It feels like such a different world. But the reality is, you just said, you talk about your outreach and how you get them involved. There's a lot of the same best practices that go into it. It's just a different audience. So can you talk about recruitment and how you are connecting with these streamers, these influencers, to encourage them to fundraise for your cause? Are they coming to you, or you go into them? How does that work?
It's probably one of the most challenging parts of the job. But it's a mixture of a lot of things, where, one is, I always recommend, is if a nonprofit is interested in working with creators and influencers, it absolutely makes sense to bring in someone that, whether they don't have to be creators themselves, but can kind of like speak the language, understand all the platforms that exist, have their finger on the pulse, And, I'm a former streamer. I don't stream as often as I used to, but I'm a creator. And every day I do my own content. So I feel personally connected to the space. So when I talk to creators, I feel like I'm on the same wavelength with them. And I think that also makes them a little bit more comfortable. But to answer your question, one, it's going to events. It's getting out there, meeting these creators in person, like the Twitch cons of the world, the PAXs, VidCons. It's absolutely important to at least kind of get on the ground. And now, there were some challenging times with the pandemic, obviously. But one thing that Stamp to Cancer has is that we work with a lot of celebrities. So we have a lot of access to some agencies that might rep creators now. So we do a lot of that type of outreach, but also really, you have these larger creators rep by agencies, but one of the most important sides of the community are the ones that might not have those reaches, but together they really build these long lasting relationships, because it's really the smaller streamers and the just everyday streamers that can really make the really big impact. So it's not only, DMing creators, it's individually reaching out to them in areas that we can find them, like Discord, for instance. We've sent messages on Instagram to creators. We try not to do mass emailing, but we'll target email to a creator, and we make sure that they know that we've looked at their content, that we've actually been able to. But obviously you can't go to every creator. You can't DM every person, but you can rely a lot on social media marketing. So obviously we have an event page for our Updust event that we use on our social to drive across our social to say, hey, we have this event happening. If you're a creator of all kinds, please join. So it's a mix of going to events, working with potential managers and agencies that might have connections to influencers, and then just really driving through social to try to get them to be a part of your event. But it takes patience and time, but we end up seeing just so many repeating creators. And I think that's where you start to see the value of it over time.
Yeah, I love that you talk about being proactive with this, because I think that is a takeaway for everyone, right? It's no matter what you're recruiting people to do, if you just say, let's let the mass marketing hit everybody for us, you're only going to get so far, right? Except if you're out there doing a little bit of guerrilla marketing, at events, building relationships, directly reaching out to people. I think that is, I think that's really great. And I think your point about it's not always necessarily the top creator that is going to bring you the most success, right? That sometimes finding those that have this great niche, or they're up and coming and they want this to be a part of who they are as an organization. Do you find that most people, they are already connected to Stand Up to Cancer before they get involved? Or is they say, I want to do something, and they find Stand Up to Cancer? Like, is it the mission connection first or second?
A lot of the times, it's a little bit of both. I think that a lot of people, there might be something in their lives. Obviously, cancer affects so many people in so many different ways that, one, it might be a person that never heard of us, but they're looking for what's a cancer research nonprofit that allows creators and it gives them the tools to do charity streams. So they might go on a Tiltify and find us organically, or a Streamlabs charity, which is another platform we use for our streamers to support us. But it's really interesting, because I might not know they have a connection until they start doing their stream or their content piece. So they might not tell me up front, but then I start watching their stream and they start sharing their story. But what's really powerful, and I think that's really kind of interesting, is because, when these streamers are live, they have a chat. And not only are they sharing their story, but you start to see the people in the chat sharing their connections. So I think it's a mix. It's that they know about Stand Up to Cancer and want to support us 100%, or they're looking for a cancer research nonprofit. And they actually, I hear a lot of them do a lot of research to find what's the right nonprofit for them. But I think that a lot of people resonate with what we're doing. Obviously, cancer research is so important. And being in the space already allows them to see that we're there, see other streamers that have supported us and creators that have supported us. So it's a little bit of both.
you're talking about retention and how you're getting people to come back year after year to participate. What strategies is your team putting in place to encourage people to return? How are you supporting them with their fundraising goals? Kind of what level of support do y'all provide?
Yeah. So there's a lot of things. I think the most important is giving them toolkits in order to allow them to not only have the graphics, the talking points, even guidelines on how we prefer streamers to participate in these events. We have best practices. We have thoughts on ideas on what they can do. We also, what's important is finding that event that is our big tentpole event that you could then kind of create these small pocket events throughout the year. So Up to Us Stand Up Cancer is an event that's now on its fourth year. And I think that now that we've solidified August as a month to really drive, what I see is a lot of creators are looking forward to August and they know about it and they want to come back. And you see these creators come back to our temple event and they might raise X amount of dollars the year before, but they come back and they always tend to raise more than the year before. And then it's also word of mouth. They're saying, I did this event for Stand Up Cancer. You should come join us too. And I feel like there's a lot of word of mouth, but engagement is the key word. Mm-hmm. As a nonprofit, do your best to comment on their stream posts. So you might see on Twitter, most creators, even non-streamers, will say, hey, I'm going to do this event. I'm going to be doing this soon. We are constantly I'm constantly finding tweets, sharing to our social team. We're engaging, we're retweeting them. We're making them feel that they are appreciated by us. Obviously, you can't do it for everyone, but if one creator saw it, they'll say, oh my God, Stand Up Cancer commented on my tweet. Or what's really also impactful is we'll jump into streams of Stand Up Cancer and we'll thank them in person on their live. So it's also, we have a Discord that runs all year. So I'm constantly sharing Stand Up Cancer research updates. I'm constantly sharing updated one-off campaigns. Like, for instance, World Cancer Day kicks off. We'll do Kiss Cancer Goodbye. And that's more of a social strategy where it's not really so much fundraising, but it's World Cancer Day to Valentine's Day. And you just post a picture of kissing a loved one, whether it's a pet or someone you love, and I'll make sure they're involved in those asks so that if they want to participate. So just keeping them in the loop. We also have a newsletter, and I just try to do my best to update our graphics, make sure they know that we have this now available to them. So it's just constant interaction and my keyword engagement.
Well, and I think what's key is, just specifically with both Discord and with Twitter, you're going where they are instead of expecting them to come to you, which I think is really a lesson across any type of program, but specifically with this demographic of you've got to be in those spaces versus saying, well, they're just going to come to our website. No, they're probably not, but they might respond to a DM. They might routinely check in with your Discord. And I'm sure that helps build community among the streamers in the Discord thread.
Yeah. And, we're actually working on a full microsite that we're going to launch in September that is going to be kind of like what I'll say is like leveling up the experience for our program, which I'm really excited about. And I think that it's just also what we do. I guess one thing I should mention is we do featured stories about them. So we'll have a streamer share a cancer story, how they're involved. I even did a video to kick off our event this month. So we like to do more visual pieces too, to also make sure that we're featuring them as part of our normal social media content. Stand Up Cancer does a lot of video work, and making sure that they're part of that too is really special because they'll see someone that might be their age that also plays The Sims, for instance. And this creator is a cancer survivor that plays The Sims. That connects with an audience. So that's also storytelling is something I kind of didn't mention, but I think is extremely important in retention.
Yeah. So let's talk about measuring success. So again, I think this has been a piece where some organizations that have wanted to dip their toe into the water with this have felt like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what I should be measuring, or they're relying on kind of your traditional peer-to-peer measurements like registration and just average dollars raised. And and it's not quite the same. I know it's a little bit different. So how are you measuring success just even beyond dollars raised?
It's how many people have joined the event year over year, how many streamers are joining us. What we very much create hashtags as part of campaigns, like Up to Us to Stand to Cancer is hashtag Up to Us. And on all of our copy, we show that. So we also look at analytics. How much was our brand seen through social the month of said campaign? It's also how has our Discord grown? And I think that one thing I like to tell people is like, when you get into this space, you can't expect to be hitting home runs. It's really about patience and continuity and consistency.
Yeah.
Because what ends up happening is I think a lot of nonprofits see these big home run hits of these big fundraisers, but really, those don't always happen. And that goes with most nonprofits. It's an anomaly, fundraising that happens. And I think that it's just measuring how bigger is the community getting year over year? What are our social analytics looking like? How is our Discord growing? And just seeing kind of how they're engaging our brand during any event. So it's very much we follow the analytics and the growth because brand awareness is very important. And one of the most important things about this industry is that and look, there's streamers that are in their 60s, but there's definitely a younger demographic from, teens to their 40s that are streaming or doing content. And these kids are going to have kids and their kids are probably going to stream. And I just think that it's becoming a normal part of our world, our intake of content. So I think it's just in general important for nonprofits to really just be there. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's pretty broad on answering that, but I feel that it's just really fundraising is always important, but there's so many more important things to think about in measuring success. And that's kind of how this industry is. It's very different.
Well, and it'll be interesting to think about kind of long-term return on investment because while people are I love that you said young people in their 40s. That makes me happy. But I mean, I think that, think about the 25-year-olds today that are really active with streaming. They're not necessarily going to be streamers forever.
No.
But the better relationship they have with Stand Up to Cancer, if they get into a point where they're able to make a larger contribution or attend a gala or, go to things where they can give their own money at a higher rate. It's the same way we talk about school-based fundraising, right? The American Heart Associations and the St. Jude's of the world that have been, fundraising in elementary schools for years. You're building this affinity at a really formative age that hopefully will carry them on just as supporters. So it will be interesting, in 20 years to look at lifetime value of people who come in through streaming compared to other peer-to-peer channels. I think it'll be really fascinating.
Yeah. And, I also want to stress that we're kind of broadening too, because we not only focus on streamers, you have people that could do Instagram fundraisers simply, or YouTube fundraisers, or TikTok fundraisers. So even though they're not streaming, that still fits into this creator economy that's using their platforms to support nonprofits. So, and I think that one thing that people got to think about is that different nonprofits are different sizes. Bandwidth is different everywhere. So measure it beyond the means of your own nonprofit. Don't look at this nonprofit that might have done this. Everyone's different. Everyone's spending different. But just knowing that your nonprofit is starting to work in this world, I think is extremely important.
So I imagine we have people, again, that are listening who are thinking this is, we want to do this, but we don't know where to start with this. What kind of advice would you give to that entry level kind of organization? How do they get buy-in internally? What does that look like?
I think it's a hard question to answer because obviously there's different causes and different impact from causes. But I think it's kind of taking a look at how have creators engaged your nonprofit already without you doing anything. Where are they engaging? What are they doing? And how can you take already what you're doing and maybe add a layer event attached to that So it could be a walk event, but how do you get creators to do something digital as part of that walk event to also align with it? But I think it's baby steps, right? I mentioned patience. I think you got to find maybe just a test pilot run of one of your campaigns where you might say, hey, we're gonna do a month-long campaign or even like a 2-week campaign, and we're gonna engage creators. And I think you have to kind of see first how they react to your outreach and make sure that you're focusing on communities that care about your cause. Now, cancer affects so many different people. So there's other nonprofits that have to be a little bit more targeted with the type of cause they are or cause they're supporting. So I think it's a little of that. It's find events you're already running and see how you can layer in creators to support those events, but also hire someone that can give you the day-to-day effort into really building that platform. Bring in someone that can really strategize, that has experience with creators. Because I think that if you never really worked with creators before and you want to just jump in the pool, it's not really the best way to start. But to answer your question, it's so different for everybody. But for me, it was a lot of patience, a lot of going to events, a lot of just building connections with creators and people that work with creators. Another really interesting thing to do, which I think is a great insight tool, is if you already have a brand you're working with that supports one of your events. This is the modern day of influencer marketing. I guarantee you that brand works with influencers to support their brand, whatever that might be. You could ask them, hey, are you interested in bringing in your influencer team to help us do outreach to support this event? And maybe we could do giveaways with that product. So these brands that you might already have as sponsors probably have influencer teams and people they're already working with. And it's like, how do you get them to flip that switch with their creators and do some social good around an event? And I have some examples of that. We worked with, this was in 2021, Sega. Actually, if you're familiar with Sega, I reached out to them. I said, hey, I'd love to work with your Sega creator community that they have, where they usually reach out to creators. Hey, we have a new game. Can you play it? And they were really into it. And we kind of flipped the switch and we did Sega Week for Stand Up to Cancer. And they brought in about 50 of their streamers and creators that support Sega. And they played Sega games for a week supporting Stand Up to Cancer. And I think that's a great way to say, hey, you could kind of lean on a collaborator that you're already working with that works with influencers to see if they can fold them into an event that you're doing. I think that that's been one of the most interesting ways to go about it. Also, Obey Clothing is a really good example. We did an event with Obey Clothing where we did a co-branded merch op, and every creator that signed up, the first 100 creators that signed up got a free Stamp to Cancer Obey shirt. But what that did for Obey as well is they never really worked a lot in the streaming space. So their brand was getting some more awareness in the streaming space while also doing good. So it's like thinking a little outside the box with what you're already doing.
Yeah.
But number one, definitely try to find someone that loves this stuff and wants to help you kind of build it out.
Well, I love the idea of how can you plug in creators into your existing events?
Yep.
Because I think there feels like there's less risk with that. And it could be a great testing ground to say, what does it look like for us to engage 15 influencers in this event? What kind of resources did we need? What kind of support that we need before blowing out and saying, we're going to go start this whole new big campaign without a proving ground. And so I think like that to me sounds really exciting. And I love the piece about, we often talk about, your corporate partners and your corporate sponsors and how can they get their employees involved. But like this becomes another great ask to say, what about your influencers that you're working with that could participate, could help promote, could help fundraise? I think could be some really quick, I don't want to say quick takeaways, but some easy ways for people who've maybe never done this to say, what are 2 things we could try? Let's see how it works. Let's see what we need to do to support before they kind of jump into this full-fledged long campaign. Because I think that is what makes people hesitate.
Yeah, I think that's totally the right way to approach it and a great way to pilot it. So absolutely 100%.
But I think one thing I've experienced just as an observer of this space is that a lot of streamers and a lot of influencers, they're not exclusive, right? They might have a different charity that they support every month. And how do you, be okay with that and just accept that that's kind of the space that you're in, and also make sure you're standing out so that you stay in that rotation?
Absolutely. That is 100% part of this space. And what I like to say is, when I went to TwitchCon my first time, they have a charity plaza at TwitchCon. So I went up to every nonprofit booth, introduced myself. It's obviously, I don't want to use the word competitive, but we're all working in the same space. So I think it's also important to meet other people doing this from other nonprofits, kind of get their learnings, insights. I'm always happy to do that with other nonprofits. And I think that you see it all the time with streamers. Like, for instance, I think there's a few that have another charity set up for September already, after already doing our event in August. And there's just some of these creators that do that. They'll do 5 to 6 events all year round. So it's just a part of it. And you can't take it as like, oh my God, they're doing something for another charity. It could be a totally different, it could be a mental health thing. It could be anything. And even if it's another nonprofit that's close to yours, that's okay too. Just make sure you're supporting them, because once you come back to them for your event, it's likely they're still going to come back. So don't let that bother you. It's basically the thing to say.
Yeah. Well, I heard this said, and I say it all the time, of, they're not our donors, we're their charity of choice.
Exactly.
And I think that's a great example of, like, they're choosing to do this for us. So we can't quite get too territorial.
Of course.
Well, Andy, this has been great. I feel like we're just scratching the surface of all this conversation, but I know you've got a big campaign going on right now in the month of August. So if there are people listening and they want to know more about what you're doing at Stand Up to Cancer, about this campaign, where can we drive people? How can people get involved?
Yeah, what's great is we actually have a landing page for our event. It's su2cstreamteam.org. That's our event page for what's called Up to Us to Stand Up to Cancer. It's our 4th year. Every August, it's a collaborative effort between people on Twitch, YouTube. It doesn't matter if you stream or you just post on Instagram. We have the tools and the ability for you to support us. So, and that's also the link to our microsite, which will launch in September. So the event page will eventually switch over to our full program. And I'm very excited to launch. We're launching our Creators for Good program in September, which is making sure that creators that don't stream feel like they're appreciated and they have their own way to support us as well. And if you want to follow me personally on socials, I do a lot of retro gaming stuff.
I was about to say, what is your streaming channel of choice? Or what do you stream?
So I used to do a podcast that was a retrospective podcast every Saturday morning on Twitch. And I put that on hiatus, but I do post every day. I'm a retro gaming content creator. I collect retro games. I play like everything from Nintendo to NES, Sega Genesis, you name it. Even on LinkedIn, I'm posting stuff like that. But you can follow me at Love Retro BTW if you want to see some of my personal worlds. Obviously, it's in the name. I love retro. But you could also feel free to DM me. My DMs are always open. If you have questions about Stand Up to Cancer, you could, DMs are always open. So even if it's my personal, reach out. I'm happy to help you get set up or whatever you need.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we will drop those links in our show notes. So if you are looking to reach out to Andy, or you just want to ask questions about, Super Mario Brothers or Zelda or whatever game he's playing these days, we'll make sure we drop those in. But Andy, thank you so much. This is such a great conversation and a new world for the world of peer-to-peer.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, and looking forward to peer-to-peer next year.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy.
Cool. Thank you.